Lawrence, you picked a very good moment because this is round 15, the final Swiss round here at Magic Spotlight Secret Lair. These players are in a win-and-in for top 8. We have Joseph Puglisi on Mono Blue Belcher against Ian Starkebaum on Domain Zoo.
Ooh, play draw, really going to matter a lot here. We see Ian Starkebaum kick things off with a Ragavan, which is the perfect first turn.
A fetch shock for Ragavan that's going to be finding some extra cards, making some treasure tokens, and meaningfully getting in damage as well. It does it all.
Notably, it's the only 1-mana threat in the deck. This Domain Zoo deck that Starkebaum has brought this weekend is something that goes a little bit bigger than a lot of other aggro decks in the field. It's planning to play big, impactful 2 and 3 mana spells instead of trying to get out onto the table on the first turn most of the time.
Puglisi also with the ideal start, suspending that Lotus Bloom on turn 1, lining up for the turn 4 Belcher.
Well, Ragavan connects pretty quickly.
Not going to be a lot of cards that play as far as Ragavan hits, as you see Stern Scolding there, permanently exiled, but getting a treasure every time is nice.
Right, the treasure is a pretty big deal whenever your threats aren't that efficient. A lot of what Starkebaum is trying to do is present a clock that is going to pressure Puglisi a relevant amount, where you can't just give a hyperlinear combo deck all the time in the world or it will literally kill you, and then you're done tapping out, you just have a wall of counter magic, and you hope dealing 5-6 points of damage to your opponent turn over turn will be enough.
Pretty interesting decision here on turn 2 for Starkebaum. Plays Flooded Strand as a second land, but is going to leave that up. Actually cracks the treasure off the Ragavan to cast Territorial Kavu. I imagine this is signaling the intention to fetch a Triome, just really needs to fix the mana somehow.
Yeah, it's either going to be a Triome or a Surveil land. If Starkebaum was just happy to keep a linear pressure-laden hand in a situation like this, I can see a world where he might want that Surveil land to find any sort of disruption, like a counterspell. But if Puglisi plays one of the quote-unquote cantrip creatures, then you're going to want to have a way to actually pave the way for this Ragavan to continue connecting. So getting a more informed Surveil makes a lot of sense to me.
Puglisi is just going to tick that Lotus Bloom down into 2 counters, play a Jawari Ruins as the land. Really not having any of the modal dual face cards, just leaving the spells face up, but these are lands that tap for blue mana.
That counts.
Starkebaum is going to go ahead and fetch, and good read there on the Surveil land being the find.
Yeah, I don't think 4 and 5 is making a massive difference at this point, but whenever you need very specific cards to actually make it to the 4th, 5th turn of the game, the selection is worth a lot.
Seems like Starkebaum found the specific desired card as the Surveil land was kept on top. Arid Mesa is the land for turn. Here comes the Ragavan and the Kavu. The Kavu is going to do some rummaging.
Ooh, and I think I see 3 disruptive elements.
I apologize. The Kavu is not going to do some rummaging. It's just going to exile the fetch land from Starkebaum's own graveyard. The hand is made.
Yeah, okay, so I think I saw from Starkebaum, it looked to me like it was Leyline Binding, Consigned to Memory, and I think the last card was Stubborn Denial.
I don't know how beatable that hand is.
Puglisi is about to show us. This is a spot where Leyline Binding being able to tag Lotus Bloom during the upkeep is really going to come into play in a big way.
Puglisi down to 12 off of that hit. Lotus Bloom to 1 suspend counter. Here is Thunder Trap Trainer. Going to be 4 looks for Puglisi. Can find quite a lot of different things with the trainer here. The modal dual face spell lands can be found, making this a quite powerful piece of utility.
It being able to trade with Ragavan is also very relevant.
Flare of Denial picked up. That's a way that Puglisi could try to claw through all this disruption.
That plays.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see this Arid Mesa from Starkebaum end up getting another Surveil land, but I am low confidence in that.
Puglisi giving the land a think. Ends up playing the Hydroelectric Laboratory tapped. As you see Starkebaum crack that Arid Mesa down to 15. Though any number but 0 is the same on Starkebaum's side of the life equation. I guess the trainer could attack. Another Surveil land here, notably a blue source in that Thundering Falls.
I think that one was maybe a light reference to the Holmes novel where Holmes actually dies.
I cannot begin to expand on this
Oh,
reference.
yeah, I mean, me either. I was just making stuff up. Who knows?
Ragavams are veiled to the graveyard.
Yeah, if this Thundertrap trainer is holding the first Ragavan, hard to imagine that the second one is what Starkebaum's looking for. Really finding something to apply a little more pressure, especially if it's quote-unquote fast pressure, like a Tribal Flames would be massive here.
Starkebaum actually really giving a think here on Puglisi's end step. Might be looking at firing off a removal spell on that trainer.
Yeah, I could see Leyline Binding.
Yeah, me too, because he's casting it.
Yeah, really interesting. This is when you know your opponent has the Flare of Denial in hand, this is basically forcing your opponent to quote-unquote trade the resource that lets you cast a free counterspell for the removal spell. So this way, Starkebaum is actually kind of removing the agency from how Puglisi gets to use that interaction piece.
Binding takes care of the trainer. The Starkebaum untaps. 6 power rumbling across. This is officially a 2-turn clock. Ooh, and Flage rummaged away. Another stern scolding off the Ragavan, but the Ragavan hits are not what the game is about.
No, not at all.
Lotus Bloom off suspend.
Oh, and that was a fast draw from Puglisi. That means that Starkebaum doesn't have another Leyline Binding.
We know about a Flare of Denial, but there's no blue creature on the battlefield for Puglisi. Definitely got some information with the way that Starkebaum fired off that Leyline Binding. These are open decklist rounds, so Puglisi has to be thinking about the threat of Stubborn Denial.
Wow, I don't think I'm seeing any Pact of Negations in Puglisi's deck. That's something that you'll see from time to time out of the Blue Belcher deck, since they can play something like main deck Consign to Memory to counter their own trigger to make it through the upkeep.
Yeah.
It's such a big deal here when trying to fight through this wall of counter magic.
Right, you would need something like Disrupting Shoulder to really make it work. And then that requires having the requisite mana value of a spell to pitch. So that stuff all makes it tough mudding for a combo. What does a turn where Puglisi tries to just tread water through look like?
All right, I think we're actually about to see what Puglisi's doing this turn. There's not a ton that he's able to do on the opponent's turn. Baying Veil maybe buys some time, technically.
Yeah, a little mini fog-ish effect.
It's
sure.
ugly, but cards like Tameshi, Reality Architect being in the deck, that having to sacrifice your Lotus Bloom is not actually game over.
Sure. Here's a Soporific Springs tapped for Puglisi. Looks like he has landed on trying to find a fancier way through the turn, not going for a combo just yet. Not clear if he has the Belcher.
That's interesting.
It's a possibility.
Right. No, we've seen a couple of looks and digging for something, but at the end of the day, this deck doesn't do a ton without the namesake.
Back over to Starkebaum. Has lethal attackers already on the battlefield. Here they come. Forcing action from Puglisi. Kabu's going to rummage, get rid of this ley line. That makes sense. And here's that Baying Veil. -2, -0 your team.
Oh, because there aren't that many land types in play. I think this means the Kavu will only hit for 2, which means Flage isn't lethal.
Starkebaum's going to use a Stubborn Denial. This is ferocious.
Sort of. I mean, yes. Yeah, don't get me wrong. Puglisi would prefer it wasn't.
Lotus Bloom is actually going to cast the Flare Denial.
Well, if the alternative is dying, it really doesn't matter
better.
how bad it looks.
It does seem better than just losing. You are absolutely right. And the Baying Veil has resolved, so just 2 points coming in right now. And we are back to Puglisi. All of the mana sources now are blue with that Lotus Veil in the graveyard.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't immediately do anything with Tameshi, right? You need white mana for that?
Yeah, I see there's one copy of Razorgrass Ambush in the deck, which does have an untapped white source on the back. It costs 3 life. Puglisi does have Exactly 3 life to play with here.
But it looks like he does not have the resources to continue fighting this game, and Ian Starkbaum is going to win game number 1.
Okay, and that is one of the games for Starkbaum that it feels like you have to, or a little bit that you got away with something. That was a spot where we saw Starkbaum able to actually find the main deck interaction that they have access to, which is not a given in a deck that does not have a ton of selection.
Players going to sideboard here. Joseph Puglisi now down a game. What can this mono blue Belcher deck do to improve its odds against Domain Zoo?
One of the first things that sticks out is Harbinger of the Seas. This one's really interesting, where with Leyline of the Guild Pact, you can end up in some strange situations with it that I'm not really going to unpack the layers of how all of that works.
I can tell you this much. They're like onions.
And Unable to Scream is one that would actually be pretty good against big creatures as well.
Another flavorful shout.
Right, exactly. Snapback, something I can see if Puglisi really wants to just attack the pressure that Starkbaum has access to. Whenever you're playing a card like Lotus Bloom, anything that gets you an additional counter off of that suspend is something that's pretty valuable. So I do like that one. Stern Scolding is a card that I think some people would think, oh, I'm playing against a creature deck, I should bring this in. Looking at the deck list, Ragavan is really the only creature that this counters, so I would expect the ones that we saw from Puglisi might even hit the showers going into the post-board games.
Makes sense. If you're liking Snapback, I have to imagine Into the Flood Maw plays as well.
Yeah, I think both of those do a good bit here.
All right, we go over to Starkbaum's side. What is our Domain Zoo player going to reach for?
So, Clarion Conqueror. This one is a pretty nice get from Tarkir Dragonstorm. This is one that has Null Rod, just on a creature. Turns off both the namesake in Belcher and the mana from Lotus Bloom. Awesome card. Deafening Silence, another one that can buy a turn once Lotus Bloom comes off suspend. That is the spell that Puglisi gets to cast that turn. That is all. Mystical Dispute, another one. All the cards in the deck or blue, or making the opponent tap 3 lands on their combo turn can be the difference between living and dying. And finally, I think Wear Tear, just being able to tag a Lotus Bloom during the upkeep has a bunch of value.
Consigned to memory, countering the namesake cards.
Right.
Just more counter spells.
Any amount of counter spells are just going to be great here. Starkbaum in general has a bunch of stuff that is kind of meant to attack creature decks. Getting those cards onto the sidelines is something that they're really going to be interested in. I don't think you can muddy the deck up too much. I could even see play draw dynamics coming up a bunch here.
It's kind of everything you went over there. It kind of feels like our player who is up a game is gaining a little bit more from the sideboarding here too. So from everything I'm hearing for you, I think we're on the advantage Starkbaum.
I do really like Starkbaum's position from here. I did think game 1 was the spot that Puglisi was just going to be fairly favored overall, but having that perfect mixture of pressure and interaction from Starkbaum. I also really like Starkbaum just attacking that blocker with Leyline Binding and valuing pressure a bunch in that position.
Oh yeah, I really like that play as well. And something else I really like, Live Magic, and I really like our sponsors, Beckett and Dragon Shield, for helping to make that possible, for keeping my Magic cards in the exact heavily played condition I bought them. I like HP cards. It's the key from getting worse in my Dragon Shields.
No, I think you and I are totally aligned on this, where I love a card with a story, where you see it, but you do have that risk of them becoming not sleeve playable anymore.
Right.
These are the sleeves that keep them playable.
Yes. Keeping them playable in my Dragon Shield sleeves, playing my 30-year-old Magic cards for, here's to another 30 years.
I know. You've heard me say it off the broadcast at least a dozen times this weekend while we're just perusing the floor, looking at a card. I love it when a card has been on a journey. It's been all over the place for 20 years, and it has made it into this room with us now. And Dragon Shield is part of what makes that possible.
Absolutely. As players are now shuffling up for game number 2. Joseph Puglisi back against the wall, mono blue Belcher. This is round 15. The stakes for this weekend could not be higher. Pro Tour invite on the line.
Oh, speaking of Dragon Shields, that is a nice placement of the deck.
Yes.
Right in the middle of the mat, just a little off center, rotated about 45 degrees.
Showing off those art style sleeves.
You know I love them.
I think the green is very fitting for a zoo deck.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Little biased, but love Jade.
Joseph Puglisi going to be on the play in game number 1. He did have the turn 1 Lotus Bloom. Not there this time, but nice find for Starkebaum. Here is our turn 0 Leyline of the Guild Pact.
Yeah, why wait till you have to take a special action on your main phase?
Thundering Falls is land number 1. Going to surveil away a Wooded Foothills as we go over to Puglisi.
Bit of a more standard curve from what you'd expect from the Domain Zoo deck.
Tap land into maybe 2-drop.
Right, exactly. Interesting thought from Starkebaum if you want to fetch here. I do like them going ahead and doing it. If the follow-up here from Puglisi is something like a Harbinger of the Seas, if there's a basic land that Starkebaum is able to get here, that would be great at making sure something like a Territorial Kavu doesn't just get stranded as a 1/1 forever.
Great call. Yeah, Basic Plains is the find. Also, Basic Plains very meaningful for ever being able to cast a Leyline Binding through it. Still costs a lot of mana, but is literally castable.
Who's to say? And, you know, you say it costs a lot of mana. Puglisi did not have that turn 1 Lotus Bloom, so this game could go a little bit.
That's true.
War of Invention may be something that Puglisi can surprise combo with, but...
Territorial to Cavo means a Spell Snare.
Whew. Whoa!
No third land for Puglisi, so no Lotus Bloom, no land. I think that's going to be really tough for the combo deck's development here, as Scion of Draco shows up for Starkebaum. Here is a Thundertrap Trainer, though. That's 4 looks at a land. And 1 is found. There is this Sink into Stupor, or rather the Soporific Springs.
Do you know what soporific means?
I don't.
Me either.
I could have tried to make something up, but this match is too serious, Carmen.
Thank you.
Starkebaum is going to go ahead and fetch, find another Surveil land, I believe a Lush Portico. Portico. You can fetch Lush Portico. Gonna give a think to that Surveil.
Well, you know it's tough if you're in Puglisi's seat. Usually you can kind of figure out or get some idea of what your opponent is looking for. It's rare they have to tank in this sort of matchup.
Yeah, that's pretty scary. As an Arena of Glory is the land out to the battlefield for Starkebaum.
That one's really nice. The fact that Arena of Glory is able to also haste out something like Scion of Draco is not nothing in this matchup.
No. I'm getting word from our director, Jeremy Knoll, that soporific means tending to induce sleepiness or drowsiness. I can use it in a sentence. I find Ryan Overturf's voice to be soporific.
Oh, sorry, what?
Starkebaum, giving a think. I imagine every turn now there's going to be consideration to exerting that Arena of Glory, whether to do that or not.
Right, so often is getting that extra attack is basically just turning a creature into a sort of Tribal Flames.
Territorial Kavu without haste is the play.
Okay. Yeah, I think this makes some amount of sense, especially if you think you might end up in a counterspell fight. You don't want to run into a spot where you don't have mana on a turn you thought you were going to have it, or that you might need it, and the whole game depends on it.
Yeah, makes total sense. Here's an attempt at Harbinger of the Seas. Starkebaum's sideboard is long on counterspells. Here's a Leyline Binding, though. Actually going for the Thundertrap Trainer to play around a Flare of Denial, I imagine. And Lightning Bolt on the Harbinger.
Okay. Starkebaum's been known to float red mana from time to time.
Flusterstorm is going to counter the Lightning Bolt, though.
Okay. I mean, this is a window for Puglisi.
Pretty big attack, though. The Kavu and the Scion coming across. I suppose the Kavu is not as big as it once was.
Hey, but it's as big once as it ever was.
That is true.
Okay, it looks like there was a think at the beginning of combat. Puglisi gets the attack through, rummages with the Kavu, foothills to yard.
Attack's going to connect. Yeah, you are not interested in trading that Harbinger. Puglisi to 7. All right, Philology Archaeologist. Puglisi has his work cut out for him to combo, right? We need to get a Charbelcher on the battlefield, and we need to have 3 more mana on a future point from there. Starkebaum actually really thinking about this Archaeologist.
It's an interesting spot where you're not sure how many times you're going to get to interact with the opponent in a meaningful way. If you don't think your opponent's going to actually get to do anything really this turn, it makes some amount of sense to just try and keep them off the table, make sure they don't get to smooth their draw at all.
And Mystical Dispute. Going after the Archaeologist.
Oh, the Kavu's a 5/5. Because the plains is every type. It's fine.
Oh, yeah, because it's not affected by the
And
Harbinger.
that looks like it is the match.
Yeah, Ian Starkebaum, 2-0 over Joseph Puglisi.